Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. I do have a special guest this evening who I'll introduce to you in a little while, but we'll talk about a few topics before then. Right, good evening, Alejandro. Do fire comments in. We'll get as many of those on the screen as we can to talk about those. So where do we start this week? Well, we had our conference on Saturday. That's our big news. We're very pleased with that. It went extremely well. Quite a buzz in the room there. I'll give you a very quick summary for those of you who unfortunately might not have been there. That basically our themes were that we're going into a phase when we're having a particular project to reach Christians. The reason for that is that quite a few people who might have supported the family party before, but if they're not pro-life or pro-marriage in the way we mean it, they might have tended to drift off to reform for the time being. So we thought, where should our focus be? So our particular focus is to try and reach Christians. So we had some new resources for that. One way to think about it would be like if we said we're having a particular project to reach young people. So it's not that everyone else doesn't matter or whatever, or we're becoming a young person's party. It's just that's our focus for the months to come. We talked as well about the council elections in 2027, which are some way away. And what we're looking for the council elections in 2027 is people who want to stand in those elections in a local ward, and people who want to spend between now and the election in 2027 involved in the community, get involved with things, meet people, knock on some doors, deliver some leaflets. So basically, we want what would it be, 2.5-year campaign building up to the 2027 council elections. So if that's something you might be interested in, email campaignmanager@scottishfamily.org, and you could explore that. So we're trying to get not many people. It might only be 4 or 5 people, and then let's say there's one person in Aberdeenshire who wants to do that. Then between now and the election, our North East branch will focus their efforts on that ward as well. So we're trying to really focus and make a big effort on certain wards to try and get some councillors elected. Let's see what we can manage. Right, welcome all the people saying good evening. Nice to see you again. What else is there to update? Well, let's get going with this. But I'll give this a mention first. I'll mention this a few times as we go through as well. Actually, I haven't finished talking about the conference. What am I doing? I'm only halfway through it. Right, so I talked about that. Right, we also heard about how the family party is having a slight shift in style as well. Whereas in order to get traction on social media, you need to be quite punchy. And if you get into scrapes and controversies, that really boosts your social media reach. But we're moving a little bit away from that, more towards trying to engage with sort of the mainstream people in the middle who maybe don't engage with politics at all on social media. So not a total revolution in strategy, but a shift towards more mainstream forms of engagement. So things we've done before that might have been quite provocative, and we will make a story, and that's been good. It's got his attention, but we'll be moving away from that, more focus on being like professional and just arguing our case, and maybe less people will see that, but the ones who do might be more impressed by it, more persuaded by it. We heard from Andrew Williams from Christian Concern, a really stirring speech. That was very good. And we heard from Mark Smallwood, who is from the Vote. Let me really concentrate, because I always want to say Vote Leave, and I don't mean Vote Leave. I mean Vote Life, which was a project down in England and Wales where they put up candidates, single-issue candidates, on a pro-life ticket in the general election. I think it has, was it 16 candidates or something like that? So they put the candidates up just on that, basically following the family party philosophy that if you believe it that unborn lives have got equal value, then you can't vote for any of the other parties down there, basically. So you should be voting for the Vote Life candidate. So Mark Smallwood came up and told us a little bit about that. It was very interesting. And I concluded talking about all sorts of things. So the speeches will be up before too long. One of the things I spoke about was that over the last year, without a particular effort, without a plan to do this, but it so happens that a number of people have drifted away from the family party for various reasons. And I went through, not individuals, but sort of people, groups of people that have tended to drift away, and basically making the point that that's left us with a more uniform and I think effective party going forward. So you can watch my speech for more details about that. So obviously, you don't win elections and grow as a party by losing people, but sometimes maybe this is a step in our maturing. Let's put it that way. I think young parties sometimes attract unusual people in some ways in terms of their beliefs, but we're sort of moving away from that phase, which I think is an important step for us as a maturing party. So keep your eye open for the videos; they'll be coming out quite soon. But right, I'll come to that later. Let's go on to some by-election results. We had a couple of candidates up in Aberdeenshire recently. They were the results 2% and 3%, which is pretty good. That's I would say they're encouraging results for us. We're trying to get into 2 or 3%. We want to do that in national elections. Get over the 2%. I think that's quite a significant threshold. So they are good results. So well done to Dawn and Phil. I know there's some hard work went into that as well. That's very good. Reasons for people drifting away, a whole host of them. If you watch my speech when it comes out online, you can see some of those. So, when I say people, we're talking about small numbers, but it's taken some tensions out of the party. Whereas previously there might have been, how do we keep these people on board? We've got a bit of a problem here, and how can we try and sort things out and keep that's diffused to some extent. Well, it's a good thing to streamline and loyalty. Indeed, it is. That's very well put. Thank you. Yes, that's the by-election, so we're pleased with that. Now, this was reported in the press. The Scottish government had adverts running. I think they spent £50,000 or something, basically encouraging people to be gamete donors, to donate eggs or to donate sperm. And they were saying it was sort of benevolent donation. People didn't get paid for it. When they say they don't get paid, I think they might get paid expenses or something like that. So they're really running this campaign as though you're just doing someone a good turn. It's like blood donation. Some people donate blood because some people need blood. Some people donate sperm because some people need sperm. It's just the same. That's the sort of tone of the adverts. And the government has stopped those. I mean, they did get criticised. To be honest, I think the campaign might have just run its course as well. I'm not sure. So is that good news? Well, yes, it's good news they finished their campaign, but they're still doing it. I mean, they still want people to come forward and donate. You can still go to hospitals and do your Build-A-Bear baby thing. You can choose the egg and sperm from a catalogue and make the baby of your choice, which is just pure eugenics. So a very minor piece of good news, but the real issue is still underneath. This issue on eugenics, who else do you hear talking about it? Very, very few people indeed. So something I think we need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because I think when people hear it, they hear what's going on, then it's, I think they'll realize this is a serious moral issue. Basically, the thing with eugenics is it's not about thinking about a child and then how to help that child. It's trying to decide which child is more desirable. So would you like to make this child, who's a bit better at maths and a bit healthier and looks certain look, got blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever, is that the sort of child you want? You'd rather have that sort of child than the sort of child who's maybe musical and has dark hair and whatever. Just to even begin to think like that, which sort of child shall I make? Let's have a look at the catalogue. Well, that's eugenics. It's really a serious moral problem, and it leads to all sorts of problems in the future. So, yeah, we need to be very careful about that. Right, someone, right, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss Free. The conference, very good meeting. I was there, enjoyed it very much, being with so many like-minded people. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. I think the atmosphere at the conference this year, it was very convivial. It really felt like a lot of people knew each other. There were some new people as well, but there were a lot of strong relationships there. And I think that's one of the main reasons people enjoy coming. They went out from us, but they were not of us. Right? That's an interesting phrase. If that's sort of quotation, it should be. That's very eloquently put. Build your own baby brigade. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This eugenics issue, I became aware of it relatively recently, only maybe a couple of years ago, through reading the book, and speaking to as well, Callum McKellar of the Scottish Council for Human Bioethics. His book about it is excellent, and I really got it reading that book. So I've tried to, I suppose, popularize it a little bit as well, speak about it and explain about it more widely. So yeah, hopefully we'll get through. Right, though, Carol, right, glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks for coming. And let's see what we've got next. Right, Stephen Flynn fancying himself as SNP leader. Now, obviously, that's quite interesting. Stephen Flynn's highly rated. Yeah, I find that quite curious. Actually, I think he's intelligent. I think he can think on his feet. I think he comes across as a bit of a bit of a bruiser. I always thought Ian Blackford's mission at Westminster was to basically be obnoxious and unreasonable, and to make himself unpopular and to create tensions and friction. Because you're the SNP at Westminster. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You're hardly supposed to be popular, fitting in, and showing that the Scotland and the rest of the UK can cooperate smoothly. That's not your job, is it, to the SNP leader? And Ian Blackford was highly talented in this regard. But I felt Stephen Flynn's got some flair in this department as well. So I'd be quite interested to see what happened if he became leader of the SNP in Holyrood, because that's a very, very different job than in Westminster. My personal feeling is maybe he seems more cut out for the Westminster job than the Holyrood one. But let's see. Let's see. Time will tell. Time will tell. Okay. Let's have a look what else we've got here. Justin Welby has resigned just within the last few hours, hasn't he? Justin Welby's resigned. What do I think about that? Well, I'm pleased from the point of view that he was such a terrible Archbishop of Canterbury, in my humble opinion. When he was appointed, was it 2013? I remember the celebration in some parts of the church saying, "Oh, this is wonderful. We've got our man in now. Just you wait and see." But he just seems to have been sucked into the blob and has become more and more compromised, and has been denying core Christian moral principles left, right, and centre for a significant amount of time now. But that's not why I went. I mean, if you completely deny traditional Christian teaching, you don't get the sack from the Church of England for that. Obviously, they can live with that. In terms of the abuse, I haven't looked into it in huge detail. For what I can see, though, I've got a slight feeling that maybe he's got a little bit of a raw deal. I don't know. And as far as he was concerned, he thought this had been reported to the police, but he didn't check up and make sure. Yeah, but I don't know the details. I don't know the details. I always think with child protection things these days, it's pretty simple. I was a child protection officer at Merkston Castle School years ago, just for a year before I took on another job. So when I became child protection officer, I thought, all right, this is quite a big responsibility. Right, what do I need to know? And what I needed to know basically is whatever came my way, if I thought I had the slightest inclination this needed to go to the social work department and or the police, you just pick up the phone and speak to them. No ifs and buts, you just do it. And if they say, we're not interested, or no, we don't need to know about that, then that's fine. But basically the point is you never get yourself in the situation where you've decided not to pass something on or not to escalate something, and you're not absolutely certain that it didn't need to be. So that was my job. So I had these two numbers, a social work number in Edinburgh and a police number as well. And I knew that was my job. There was other aspects of the job as well, doing various routines. But I knew in terms of if something came up, that's what you do. You pass it on. That's the whole point of the child protection movement, isn't it? That was the change that came through in the 90s, I would say, because things have been covered up. The idea was that you cannot cover it up. You cannot make the decision that I'm not going to pass this on to social work and or the police. You have to do it. Yeah, I don't think in my time, did I ever have to phone them? I can't remember. Maybe I did. I don't think anything really serious was followed up by them. So maybe Justin Welby failed to do that. But well, let's see who comes next. It might well be out of the frying pan into the fire. We shall see. But that's that. Right. Right, assisted suicide. Obviously, this has roared onto the scene with incredible speed, because in Scotland, it's been drifting along at a snail's pace for, feels like, well, it is years and years and years. Then all of a sudden, we've got the Labour government, and bang, here we are. It's upon us. There's going to be a vote at the end of this month. So it seems very, very rushed. Now, I think a really important thing here, there's forever, Uncle Tom Cobbin all is saying, write to your MP, write to your MP, write to your MP, write to your MP. Okay, which is fine. I think on this issue, there maybe is some point writing to an MP, because it is an open debate, which is quite rare these days. Normally with a key moral issue, there's one side that's the acceptable opinion, and the other side you're something faux bigot. But with assisted suicide, it's not like that. It is actually an open debate. So I think politicians maybe are open to persuasion in some cases. But my expectation is that this will pass with this massive Labour majority. Keir Starmer has been a supporter of assisted suicide for a long time. And I think with this huge tranche of young Labour MPs, I really think it will pass. But let's see. So this wouldn't apply to Scotland, by the way. But if it did pass in England and Wales, it really would make it a lot more likely that it would pass in Scotland as well. I think that it's not inevitable, but I think it's very likely for it to happen. So Kim Ledbetter, the Labour MP, introducing this. She says, most evidence from around the world shows that it's somewhere between 0.5 and 3% of deaths, depending on the population. Right, well, that's not the, unless I'm missing something here, that's not the most intelligent thing to say. It's 3% depending on the population. I mean, the whole point of a percent is it doesn't depend on the population. Anyway, we're probably talking of hundreds per year, not thousands. So she's saying it's not a slippery slope. Don't worry about it. It's not going to increase and increase. Well, let's see what else the BBC's been reported. Will there be a slippery slope? That is, could the bill be expanded after it's become law? Could it be expanded to include those with chronic pain? As it stands, the people have to be terminally ill. And she says it won't be amendable. That isn't how it works in this country. What pure rubbish. That is absolutely idiotic to say that. I mean, you can't amend a law. That's just a bizarre thing to say. Of course you can amend a law. Or instead, they could just scrap it and introduce a new one. This isn't how it works in this country. So in this country, once you pass a law, it cannot ever be changed. Kim Ledbetter seems to be arguing. I mean, what? Words fail me. Words fail me. That anyone could say something so ludicrous. And that's the standard of debate at Westminster. She's confident that if the bill is passed, it will remain as it is. Okay, why is she confident? She's confident because it's impossible to change laws in Britain, apparently. So I guess we should be still burning witches then, should we, Kim? Or has that law changed? I don't know. Or there'll be a specific offence of coercion. So they're going to stop coercion by having a law against it. So when someone just hints to the relative, oh, come on now, or, you know, what do you think? How about that? Have you thought about it? You know, or even the gentlest little facial expression or little comment here and there, the law's going to stop all of that. Of course it isn't. What's it going to take for something to be proved to be coercion in a court of law? That's going to have to be pretty explicit and blatant, isn't it, to be caught by a law? Whereas the actual sort of coercion that the danger relates to couldn't possibly be covered by a law. So, pretty poor response. And she said it's not going to extend. Of course, it won't extend. Don't be ridiculous. It's not a slippery slope. But the My Death, My Decision campaign group are already saying this doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough because it doesn't include people. What's the term they use? Let me see. It's a significant and longer waited. They wanted to be terminally ill or intolerably suffering. Okay, so it's inevitable. If you've got someone who's in pain, permanent, incurable pain, then they're inevitably going to say, why can't I kill myself? If they can, just because they're going to die in 6 months, why can't I do that? And basically, there's no answer. Once you've conceded the principle the doctors are going to dole out poison to patients, then the group of patients eligible to that will extend and extend. It'll extend to people who are not terminally ill. It'll extend to people who are mentally ill. It'll extend to younger and younger people. It'll extend to people who are not capable of make decisions for themselves, etc. It's inevitable. It's a logical slippery slope, and that's what will happen. It's what has happened in other countries as well that introduced assisted suicide and/or euthanasia. Now, Keir Starmer, his record on this, quite interesting. He's always been a supporter of assisted suicide, but when he was the Director of Public Prosecutions, is that the right term? Yeah, when he had that role, cases came before him where basically someone had killed someone to put them out of their misery. So someone had engaged in assisted suicide, if you like, or maybe even euthanasia, and they would say it was out of compassion to end someone's suffering. When these cases became before Keir Starmer, what did he do? He said it wasn't in the public interest to prosecute them. So of his own decision, he decided that basically assisted suicide wasn't illegal already, because even though it blatantly was illegal, he would decide not to pursue the cases. So the cases didn't go to court and the people got away with this. So that's Keir Starmer's background. And the thing to emphasize here, as ever, as a political party, people voted Labour, they voted for Keir Starmer, and it was obvious that the Labour Party has said that they would make space for this. It was obvious it was going to happen. Whereas the culture with a lot of people is you vote for who you like, vote Labour, that's fine, no qualms, we vote Labour. Then as soon as they're elected, you start thinking, oh, right, I'm going to go and see my Labour MP, I'm going to write them a letter, I'm going to persuade them that they shouldn't actually do what they said they were going to do after all. So I say, anyone who voted Labour, well, this is what you voted for. And if you're trying to put the cork back in the bottle now, well, that may succeed or it may not. But maybe next time round, voting for a pro-life party might be a good move. I do think with Keir Starmer as well, just before I leave it, the other thing that he didn't prosecute in his role was sex-selective abortions. So when there was, absolute definite evidence that doctors were performing abortions that were requested because the couple didn't want to have a daughter. They wanted to have another try and have a son. So such cases came before Keir Starmer, and he said, no, there's no need to take these to court. Effectively, they will just let these people off. So again, sex-selective abortion was not illegal, effectively, while Keir Starmer was in that position. Because if you broke the law, he would just say, well, let's just ignore it. And that's the man who is the Prime Minister. So, well, slightly related to this is Andrea Williams of Christian Concern and myself having a chat at the conference. And I listened to Andrea speaking last night as well. And she was talking about another issue that I've been aware of. I maybe hadn't completely got my head around it, but I think I have more now. And this is the issue where, for example, a child's extremely ill and the prognosis is that the child is going to die. In this case, it was an English hospital. But the parents will look around the world, and there might be another hospital somewhere, maybe private. Another hospital will say, well, look, we've got a treatment that maybe could help, and we'll try it. We can give it a try. If you bring your child to us, Italy, one of the cases, if you bring your child to Italy, fly them over, and we can give this treatment a try. We think there's a chance this can make a real positive difference. And the parents are saying, right, this is what we want to do. And in those cases, what's happened, well, on a number of occasions, is that the hospital says, no, you can't do that. Your child has got to stay in our hospital and die. That's what's best for your child. So we're defending the right of your child to die in this hospital. And so this ends up with a legal wrangle. So the parents take it to court. It ends up going to a judge. And I think what Andrew is saying, basically in every case where this has happened, the judge says, yes, I'm agreeing with the hospital. The parents are not allowed to take their child to receive other treatment in a different country. The child has to stay and die. Now, the two problems with this. One is assuming that death is the best outcome for a child, which is a very concerning philosophy. And the other problem is the interference with the parents' rights to look after their own child. So they're quite shocking cases. I hadn't really registered what was going on in those until last night, but I think that's something I'm certainly aware of now. Right, I think it's time to bring on our special guest, I think. So Paul is at the ready. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Richard.
So Paul is involved now. Paul's job title has got an awful lot of words in it. He holds a position with the Diocese of Edinburgh and St Andrews, and a pro-life position. What's the precise title?
Oh, I think pro-life officer.
Okay.
Yeah, that would do. So basically, my job is to build the culture of life in Catholic churches in our archdiocese. So that goes from sort of just north of Berwick up to St Andrews, Stirlingshire, the Lothians. So I get my miles in.
Yeah. I mean, before we go on to our particular topic, so how's it going?
Job for life, mate.
But,
no, very well. Lots going on. Just listening to what you're saying there about assisted dying, that's very much assisted suicide. That's very much the focus of things at the moment. A lot of the time, it's being able to reach out to Catholics, to connect them and to organise them, and to just help them to understand the Church's teaching and then mobilise them in the right direction. So I've been doing it for a few years now, and thoroughly enjoying it. Best job in the world.
Good. Now Paul's come on this evening to tell us about the Scottish Government's abortion review, which I've mentioned a little bit, but Paul knows a lot more about it than I do, and it is extremely interesting and extremely concerning. So Paul, do you want to start at the beginning?
Yeah.
Tell us where this all come from?
Okay, thanks. So Scottish Government is committed itself in its programme for government to a review of the abortion law in Scotland. And what that review intends to do is to look at all the different aspects of the abortion law, with the idea of identifying proposals for what they call reform before the end of the current parliamentary term, which is 2026. And as part of that review, an expert group has been set up by Scottish Government, and their job is to represent sort of a legal perspective, an academic perspective, a clinical perspective, and to look at all sorts of different bits of abortion law and to make recommendations. And once this group has made its recommendations, then a public consultation will be held. So far, so factual. The dates for this are quite important. We in the church, as one of the sort of pro-life stakeholders, we first got an email about it on the 16th of May this year. So just bear that date in mind for the moment. And we were invited to put our points in, and it was explained that there are going to be various meetings of the expert group looking at things like time limits, grounds for abortion, conscientious objection, regulating providers, that sort of thing. So the expert group is now being put together. They've had their first meeting. And while I say that they're experts in legal and academical and clinical fields, their views are pretty much set in terms of what the direction of the travel of the group is. So there are 13 people on the review group, and they are people such as, it's chaired by a lady called Anna Glazier. Anna Glazier is the government's women's health champion and chair, but she's also the current chair of a steering committee for BPAS, which is the largest abortion provider in the United Kingdom, and she's a former trustee of that organisation. The other people on there's people like Sharon Cameron, who is the chief abortion provider in NHS Lothian. There is Rachel Clark, who's the chief executive of BPAS, and a lady called Jill Wood, who is part of the Scottish feminist organisation Engender. And Engender have recently written quite a long report recommending decriminalisation. Now, I suppose being fair enough, you would say, look, if the country's going to have a debate about abortion and look at the law, the people that I've just mentioned probably should be at the table and have a voice. So it's kind of really who's not at the table that's the question. So of the 13 people that are part of the expert group, 10 of them have already expressed an opinion or represent an organisation which has an opinion in favour of decriminalisation of abortion. 6 of them are actually abortion providers or abortion practitioners. A couple of them are linked to the campaigning organisation Abortion Rights, and several of them are linked to the group Engender, which wrote this report in favour of decriminalisation. So they acknowledge themselves there is no pro-life representation on the committee at all. They've had their first meeting, or rather they've released the minutes of their first meeting, which took place in August. And they heard from the World Health Organization, who gave them a presentation. And the World Health Organization kind of talked about how they have a rigorous framework for looking at things, but recommended to the Scottish expert group that they take forward full decriminalisation of abortion. In other words, removing all criminal offences relating to abortion and focus on regulating services instead. They don't favour a grounds-based approach or anything to do with time limits. They just favour what they call abortion on request, what we'd refer to as abortion on demand. And the group itself, having heard from the World Health Organization, agreed one of their sort of overarching principles would be what they call a non-regression principle, which put simply means they're only reviewing the law in one direction. So to sort of sum up where the group is at the moment, there are 13 experts, 10 of them are already in favour. One of them wrote a report that probably the government is going to rely on. They've already agreed to look at it in one direction. I probably wouldn't bet on the outcome of what this group is going to recommend.
I was just going to say, do you know anyone who's taking bets on the outcome? I mean,
I'd put your money on something else. I should also say that the bit about dates, I said dates there. We first heard about it on the 16th of May, and presumably that was the date when Scottish government. There is actually a department in Scottish government called the Abortion Policy Team, which you talked about. My job title, I wouldn't want that one, but the abortion. I assume that's the point when the Abortion Policy Team reached out to all the different stakeholders and informed them what they were doing. So that was on the 16th of May. By the 21st of May, the organisation Engender had managed to write a 77-page report with multiple references and in great detail. So you get the feeling that either Engender are very good at knocking out detailed reports, or maybe they had a bit of notice of what was coming with this particular thing.
Yeah. Are they looking at provision for late-term abortions as well? That's been in the news a little bit. Is that going to come under the ambit?
It will, because I think one of the ways, the best way to point out simply how wrong decriminalisation is that it would allow abortion up to birth. I mean, we already have in Britain, abortion up to birth is allowed if a baby is thought to be disabled. But for other reasons, abortion is only available to 24 weeks. But I think one of the things I want people to understand about this is, you've mentioned there, Richard, that, yeah, people are talking about, it's difficult to get late-term abortions in Scotland, and people have to go to England. My feeling is that that's the cover story. The motivation for Scottish government, well, if you support abortion, there's really not much wrong with the abortion law in the United Kingdom. There's almost, people are not turned down from abortions, and we've had abortion on demand for many, many years. What we're looking at here is Scottish government, I think, are not trying to solve a practical problem. They're trying to solve an ideological one. Because the abortion movement across the world has always been simple and consistent. They've always said free abortion on demand, a woman's right to choose. And what that means is abortion for any reason, at any time, paid for by the state or by an insurance company. And that's always been the end goal of the abortion movement. So decriminalization is about achieving this ideological goal. It's not about making it mostly easier to get an abortion. Almost all abortions can be achieved in Britain at the moment.
Yeah. There's an article in the Herald, I quoted at the conference actually, where they were talking about why late-term surgical abortions were important. And the doctor writing it, he obviously made a mistake with his language. He forgot to use his euphemisms. And he said surgical abortions are often important to save the woman the trauma of delivering a dead baby. He's not supposed to say that, is he? He's supposed to use anything but those words. But he slipped up in the heat of the moment and told the truth.
Yeah.
About what was happening.
Every now and again, the mask slips, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing with late abortions, there are, as you probably know, abortion has changed over the last few years, and more so since the pandemic, so that the vast majority of abortions now are chemical. They're done using pills. They are not surgical. But there are a small number of surgical abortions, and these are the brutal dismemberment type of abortions. And Scottish doctors, for whatever reasons and wherever they draw the line, have generally not been willing to carry out abortions over 20 weeks. So a small number of Scottish women do go to England for those and go to private clinics for that. Yeah.
Just a story from the conference. Phil Tanzer told a story of someone he'd been speaking to. And basically the woman had taken the abortion pills, and then she passed the baby while she was out for a walk in the woods. So she got this tiny little baby. She was traumatized by seeing how formed it was, how identifiably human it was. So she dug a hole. I think she left it there, went to got a partner. Then they went back and dug a hole in the woods and buried it, him or her. And I said, absolutely traumatized by the whole experience. And that has been repeated on a huge scale around Scotland.
Yeah, and the fact that many abortions now what's called pills by post, so that all the consultation is done by video or telephone call, and the woman who is having the abortion will never meet in person a doctor or a nurse. So there's all sorts of safeguarding concerns about that, about coercion and things. But also, abortion used to be a surgical procedure that was done to you by somebody else when you were unconscious. Now it's something that you do to yourself in your own home, and you see the consequences. And I've heard similar stories from pro-life groups getting phone calls saying, I'm holding a baby in my hands and nobody told me this. And the psychological consequences of this, I think, was storing up a problem.
Yeah. Now, I'm interested in BPAS. BPAS, as far as I'm aware, do not operate any abortion facilities in Scotland. So what on earth are they doing in this consultation? I mean, they're basically, they're technically a charity, but more a business. Whatever have they got to add to the discussion of abortion policy in Scotland?
Fair question, yeah. But almost all abortions are done in Scotland by the NHS, whereas in England, it's the other way around. They're NHS abortions, but they're contracted out to organisations like BPAS or Mary Stopes. And BPAS in particular have a very poor safety record. If you look them up on the Care Quality Commission, There are, over the years, there have been a lot of concerns about their clinics. But in addition to carrying out abortions, and I think BPAS carry out over 100,000 every year, they also have a PR and media and campaigning arm. And I think it's this, what I said, this ideological commitment to abortion. Are they trying to carve out a niche for themselves in Scotland, maybe get some business in Scotland? I don't know. One of the topics for discussion by this expert group is regulation of abortion providers. Now, if the only abortion provider is the NHS, you wonder if that's necessary. Are we looking at the day when there will actually be late-term abortion clinics in Scotland? I'm speculating, but what we are certainly looking at the end of this review is a Scottish Abortion Act, because abortion in Scotland is a devolved issue, but it's still mostly regulated by the UK 1967 Abortion Act. But if the proposals of this expert group are then presented to Parliament, we will have a dedicated Scottish Abortion Act, which I think will include a lot of these, will include decriminalisation. Yeah.
What proportion of all deaths are accounted for by abortion? Well, the abortion, it's over a quarter of pregnancies end in abortions, between a quarter and a third, isn't it?
It's something like that. In the United Kingdom, there are 250,000 abortions every year.
Yeah. So in Scotland, 18,000 abortions a year. I think the number of deaths is something like it's in the 50,000s, I think.
Okay.
So it's about certainly abortion more than bridges the gap. The last time I checked, between the number of births and the number of deaths.
Yes.
So the last time, I think the number of births, last time I saw the figures, I think it was maybe 48,000. Number of deaths might have been something like 58,000. Pretty dramatic gap. But number of abortions, 18,000. So it more than covers the gap. Now, I recognize the name you said of people involved in this review, and that was Rachel Clark. Rachel Clark, I will never forget, because I watched her in the committee when she said, quote, "God forbid Scotland ever becomes a place where life is valued from fertilization."
Okay.
I mean, that's, I suppose from a spiritual point of view, that's shaking your fist at God in the most explicit way you possibly can. So basically, God forbid people should ever value all human lives, she said, with a sort of fake smile on her face. So they've got Rachel Clark in there. I mean, Engender is some organization. They're basically a hardline, dogmatic, feminist activist group that are paid for out of our salaries. And abortion is just one of their topics, but they're on every other topic going as well. They're based in Edinburgh, sort of in the old town, sort of tucked away behind the Royal Mile. I mean, I can't remember, is it hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in any case, runs them. And they're just a campaigning group. I mean, can you imagine, Paul, I sometimes think, can you imagine being on the other side of these arguments where people like us would be being paid, we'd be sitting in some government office somewhere, being paid a fat salary by the taxpayer to argue our case? Because that's the people on the other side, aren't they? They're all state funded. And then it's volunteers, it's charities, it's churches that are on the other side. It's a totally different world.
And still we cause them problems.
Yeah.
No, BPAS is tens of millions of pounds. And that buys a lot of campaigning and publicity. What I would say to people about this is, don't worry too much, or don't. Some pro-lifers have said, well, we ought to be getting on this committee and we ought to be complaining that why aren't we on this committee? There is nothing you can say to this committee that will change their mind. And even if you did, they've already agreed a non-regression principle. So it's like turning up at a party you haven't been invited to and asking to be let in. It's a bad look. Don't bother. The way to approach this is to highlight that, decriminalisation is abortion up to birth. and to work through the public channels, and to call into question the credibility of this committee.
Yeah. I think there's a silver lining to it, and the silver lining is that keeping abortion on the political agenda and in the news. I always think the last thing we want is for it to be a settled, quiet issue that no one talks about anymore, and we just get on with other things. That's the worst case scenario, I think, for the pro-life movement. But this is going to keep it very much a live issue. And the more extreme they get, then the more people will be repelled by it. So overall, I think it's probably going to be helpful, I would say, at this stage. Just one last question. You mentioned the Minister for Women's Health. Who's the Minister for Men's Health again?
Can I get back to you?
Yeah, get back to me as soon as they appoint one. Do I want them to have a Minister for Men's Health? No. I don't want them to have a Minister for Women's Health either, particularly. I mean, what is the point of trying to divide things up like that? If you have a Minister for Women's Health, what she will inevitably do is focus on health issues that are specific to women. But that's not a logical way to look at healthcare. You should look at it and look at the most serious issues and allocate funding accordingly. You get all your statistics and work out how to spend your money most effectively. But instead of that, they put a spanner in the works and say, no, we've got someone who's specifically looking at women's issues. And, well, that's the Scottish government for you. Right, that was very interesting. Anything else to add on that topic? I think that we've learned a lot about that. Shall we move on?
I think it will come up again. Keep an eye on it. But yes, thank you very much.
Are you going to stay on to talk about some of the next ones?
I will. And if you're talking about the assisted dying bills, there's a lot going on. So I'll be happy to come in on that.
Let's just go through the next item, and then we can come to that after. Right, this is something interesting. Now, we'll play a little game here. Everyone watching, you look at these photographs. These are P1 photographs published in the Scotsman of classes starting school this term. And I want you to look at these photographs and see what you notice is the common factor in all of them. I'll give you a clue. Look at what the teachers are doing. Okay, photograph number 1. Photograph number 2. Photograph number 3. Can you see what they're doing? Type in your answers. That one's a bit more blatant. What are the teachers doing? What are the teachers doing? Or at least one of them. And another one. And another one. And another one. Not that one. Right, what did you notice? I think someone said that, but they've yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So what was going on? I mean, when I was teaching, there was quite a big thing. You do not touch pupils unless you've asked for permission, and it has to be for the purpose of what's that instruction, so you can hold someone's hand to show them how to hold the cricket bat or something, or if you need to restrain them from doing something dangerous. But apart from that, you keep off them. So what's going on here? So now you can see it. I think possibly all 3 teachers have got a hand on a pupil. Certainly the one on the left got a hand on a shoulder. Go back to this one. I mean, that's like a full-on hug for the one there. Again, that's arm around the waist, holding that boy by the shoulders, holding that boy. The teacher on the left there has got a hand around that boy. The teacher on the left's got a hand on the shoulder, and teacher bottom right in particular, sort of hugging that boy, and the one above as well, sort of got a hands on the girl there. So my question is, what's this all about? What's going on here? I've got various theories. You can see what you think. But what do you think, Paul? What's your first impression? Are you surprised by seeing that?
My first thought was what's going on, but just when you're saying that, it's always a boy, so it's probably the boy that can't stay still. There's always a boy full of energy, isn't there? Yeah.
So I would imagine a big part of it is, I mean, school photographs are a bit of a nightmare to get everyone standing still in the right place, or whatever. So yeah, that's probably a boy that they want to hold, well, more or less hold in place. Yep. So it's an indication of the discipline. I think in terms of like, is touching pupils inappropriate? Now, if this is what goes on in the school photograph, for goodness sake, what goes on the rest of the time? What goes on in the classroom when someone's stuck with a maths question? I mean, they're going to get smothered in there. I mean, it really seems like this is not every photograph, by the way. I showed you about 8 photographs. There were maybe another 5 that didn't have a teacher holding on or putting their hands on a pupil or whatever, but most of them did. So it looks like this is very, very widespread. So I think some of it might be boys who can't sit still or whatever, which I would say that's a sort of obedience issue. That's not great that that's happening. I think as well, that I've commented on this before, there's a degree to which I think education is becoming very, very feminized. So it's a context where now male teachers feel a bit uncomfortable, not really geared towards them. Whereas female teachers are more likely to think, all right, this is just the way I'd like to do it. This is just right. Which means that teaching moves more towards a motherly sort of approach than a fatherly sort of approach. And I think that's what you see coming through as well, with the teachers basically hugging the kids left, right, and center. Remember when I was a housemaster years ago, I would have my house meetings. I would walk in, all the boys would stand up, and then tell them to sit down, and then have the meeting, whatever, that'd be that. But after I finished as a housemaster, a female housemaster took over. And I remember sitting in the house meeting once, and there was a young boy sitting next to her, and the young boy sort of draped himself over her shoulder, and he was playing with her hair during the house meeting. And I sat there thinking, this is not for me anymore. No way. I'm out of here. If that's what boys are going to expect, they're going to be doing with teachers, then bye-bye. I'm off to do something else. And that's how many times has that been reproduced? I mean, the proportion of male teachers is going down and down and down, and I think that might contribute to it. But I suppose the last point is, I mean, what are the rules these days? I mean, has it changed? Maybe someone with more recent than 2018 experience can tell me, because that would have been a real no-no. But let's imagine one of those teachers had been a man. How would that have gone down? Let's say one of the teachers had been a man and it subsequently turned out that some untoward things were going on, then I think people would look back at the picture like that and think, oh, right, okay, maybe we should have been more alert to what was going on. Yeah, so I was very surprised at those. But then the last one, in contrast, oh no, that's not the last one. Sorry, I've gone back to the beginning. In contrast, we have that. Right, spot the difference between all the other photographs. No hugging teachers. Uniform, as in the uniform is that everyone wears the same thing instead of picks from a range of things. It all looks very smart. Right, out of all those schools, which one would you be most confident sending your child to? I would say this one is George Watson's College. As it happens, it's an independent school. And I would say, looking at that inspires confidence. I mean, it may be that those 2 teachers are completely useless, and those kids are total tearaways and total chaos in their classroom. But the impression I get from that photograph is that that's not the case. That photograph looks good to me. Now, I would say George Watson's College, I think, is very politicized indeed. They've had issues where they've been letting at least one pupil change gender in school and not telling the parents. There's been controversy over that. So I think the school has been infected with the same virus as almost all other schools. But it was just quite instructive having a look through those photographs. There are a few little lessons to learn there.
Is it true, Richard, that Watson's is so big it has its own accent? I've heard that said.
I heard it. It's got 1,800 pupils, biggest independent school in Europe last time. And one of their teachers until recently was, I can't remember how you pronounce her name, Javed. Basically, the one that people say was Hamza Yousaf's mistress. She was a teacher at Watson's until relatively recently. She played a role in a video they made in their Black Lives Matter, white privilege, critical race theory phase. They had I would say, like pure indoctrination video made, and Hamza Yousaf's special friend, I understand, who was a teacher there, presented this video. But anyway, that's enough about George Watson's college. Right, do you want to tell us a bit more from assisted suicide? Is there a particular angle you wanted to bring in?
Just to bring people up to date, and I think what you said earlier, there is a free vote going on. There are of course two bills. There's one in the Scottish Parliament that, as you said, has been going on for a very long time, and there's one at Westminster which seems to be being rushed through with indecent haste. It was only published, I think, today or yesterday, and the first vote is on the 29th. And it's been introduced exactly the same way that abortion was. It's a private member's bill with at least Keir Starmer's in favour of it. But there is a free vote, and I'm seeing a lot of letters coming back from MPs, and the majority are not committing at this point. So I would certainly say definitely keep writing to MPs and MSPs. Some of them are holding constituency surgeries or additional surgeries to talk to people about this subject. And although the vote on the 29th in England, the law there will only apply to England and Wales, it will have a huge influence on what the Scottish Parliament does. I think the things that people ought to be telling MPs and MSPs is the concerns of disabled people. That I don't think there's any disabled organisations that are backing it. Many disabled people are very concerned. And the other thing is that the strict safeguards argument is one that comes out from Kim Ledbetter and proponents a lot. But we've seen these laws in so many countries for so many years that argument is no longer credible. We had a speaker over last month from Canada, and where you'll have probably seen the stories. It's gone horrendously wrong in Canada. And the latest story I saw was in the Daily Telegraph a couple of weeks ago. And a lady was on the operating table about to have a mastectomy. And the surgeon actually said to her, "Have you considered assisted suicide?" So this guy said when it was being introduced in Canada, they were saying, look at the Netherlands, look at Belgium, it's all gone horribly wrong. Mm-hmm. And what Canadians in favour of it were saying, no, it'll be okay here, it'll be fine, we'll have strict safeguards. And hey presto, Canada, even the people who are in favour of the principle admit that Canada's gone badly wrong. So it's really, for people who are saying there will be strict safeguards, it's for them to show that it will work rather than for us to accept, oh, that's all right.
I find it interesting that the horror stories have been coming out of Belgium and the Netherlands for decades. And yet I would say they didn't really cut through in Britain. But in Canada, suddenly they have. And my theory is that what was going on in Canada, English-speaking country, gets picked up by the American media, alternative media. And so people have heard about that. I think the bad news stories from Canada have traveled around the English-speaking world very freely and effectively, whereas the appalling news stories from Belgium and the Netherlands somehow haven't crossed the language barrier anywhere near as easily. So, yeah, it's been interesting to see that. But Canada certainly has. That's become very widely known that what's going on in Canada is appalling.
Yeah.
I would imagine that will have some bearing on people as they vote. I would say, though, any politician, if you go to see them about an issue, they want to talk about the issue. Ultimately, they're thinking as well that they want to keep you on board. They want to be friends. In other words, that we still vote for them. So I would wonder whether some politicians might like to be telling the story. What I did is I listened to my constituents and I did what they wanted. So when someone comes along and says, right, I'm not voting for you. If you voted for assisted suicide, that's terrible. That's completely against what I believe. I'm not voting for you again. They will say, well, no, it wasn't me. No, that wasn't my view. I was just representing my constituents. So I wonder if that might be used as a line to try and evade responsibility, basically, and to be able to present themselves as a bit more neutral, despite the fact they voted one way or another. But we'll see. We shall see.
I mean, if that is their point of view, and I have actually seen one or two saying more or less saying I'll go with the majority. If that is the case, then it's up to us to be in front of them and putting our case. And it's certainly the case that the more politicians learn about how assisted suicide works in practice, the less they like it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Westminster bill has been snuck out in the shortest possible time frame. So there isn't really time for proper consideration and debate.
So the vote on the 29th, I'm not familiar with the Westminster system as I am with the Scottish system. So the vote on the 29th, let's assume it passes. What happens then? Is there a second vote at a later stage?
Okay, yeah. So on the 29th, Westminster almost does it the opposite way around to Holyrood. So Holyrood has a committee and then a vote. Westminster has a second. So the first reading is just the formal introduction of the bill. That's already happened. The 29th is the second reading, and that is significant. Okay. If there's a second reading, it then progresses to a committee that will scrutinise it and propose and discuss amendments, and it will come back for a third reading. And after third reading, it goes to the Lords. So in Holyrood, it's committee, and then first vote is the significant one. In Westminster, it's this second reading that determines whether it gets into committee for scrutiny. So it's an important, it's not a formality.
Right. Okay. I've got lots of other topics to talk about, but it is 10 o'clock. So I think we should call it a day there. Let's see if there's any last questions. School uniforms are good. I agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said in favour of school uniforms, which obviously is why the Scottish government's in the process of abolishing them. So the government's basically said pupils shouldn't be punished for not wearing their uniform. Was it Stirling Council area? Was it Falkirk? I saw in the news recently, they said pupils will not be punished for not wearing uniform. Translation, we're not having uniform anymore. I mean, how many school pupils wear uniform because that's what they really want to do? And how many of them would actually like to try it on and see what they can get away with? Well, that game's lost its fun, actually, because you can get away with anything. Yeah, so what's a really positive thing for school in his ethos? The Scottish government has just pulled the rug from under it. And they've banned blazers as well. Yet the school can't specify a blazer as part of uniform. And it also, if I remember rightly, you can't specify like branded items. So you can't have a sweatshirt with the school badge on, because I guess that's too elitist and, I don't know, too expensive or something. You're not allowed to have it. As soon as you say you're not allowed to insist on it, then it's not uniform, is it? It's just going to go. So the Scottish government has made a total mess of that, and they're moving in the wrong direction, as they are on everything else to do with education. Yeah, I don't know what the independent schools are going to do about the uniform issue, because, I mean, this guidance, even if it doesn't technically apply to independent schools, the inspectors will inspect them on the basis of it. And I'm sure there's nothing the SNP would like more than to get this lot looking like these ones. Now, nothing about the children, but just well, not even though, because even that's too much. Those badges that they're wearing, they shouldn't really have those. They shouldn't have branded materials. And then, even in this case, there are lots of different interpretations, but at least there's some sort of guidelines in place. Obviously, blue and grey and white or whatever. But yeah, the government will be moving away from that. Because if you don't follow those even, then basically nothing will happen. So the experience the kids will have is the school will say, here's our uniform policy. You have to wear black shoes, black socks, black trousers, a white shirt, and a blue sweatshirt. That's our uniform. And the kids can say, is it? Well, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to wear what I like. And then the school will do nothing. So the kids have learnt the lesson that you could ignore the proper authority of the school and society in general. And that's just a bit of fun. You get away with it. And that's that. So it's a miseducation on a grand scale. Anyway, who got me started on that? Let's run over a little bit now. So thank you very much, Paul. That was very enlightening. Yeah, when there's an update, you must come back
Thank you.
Provide us with I mean, because who knows how this is going to end? I mean, it's a total mystery. It's a cliffhanger. We just don't know. Don't know how this might end up. Right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for your comments, and I look forward to seeing you. I'll just say one more thing. Actually, I've done my trick again, in that I put something in the title and didn't get to talk about it, and that was Trump on education. I've got a video about Donald Trump outlining his education policies. I think probably all of them I completely agree with, but we'll save that for next week. That will be interesting for next week. So, right, thanks a lot, Paul. And
thank you.